What's going on, guys? It is the Blitz podcast. We are back here with the power rankings. We're up to number 17 now. My greatest franchise in all of sports history, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we got a special guest on today in Mitchell McDonald to try and contain my excitement. So, Mitchell, glad to have you back. How are we feeling?
I'm doing pretty good. Found some time to get in here on the pod rankings before we make it to my team, who we got a little bit later in the rankings, but it'll be a nice change of pace for us, especially after you and Kane argued over this ranking for about an hour yesterday.
Yeah, that may or may not have happened. It was certainly a healthy debate, and glad we had it, hashed it out. Steelers are still here, but very excited to talk about this team today. We're very excited to have Mitchell back, 'cause he's been grinding away with his 27th consecutive year of school, yeah, pretty excited here. So we'll jump right into it with the quarterback situation. And it is the god Kenny Pickett here. I've gotta turn off like the
fandom.
Yes, it's gotta stop. Wait till we get to the next slide. It's gonna be really fun. But we do have Kenny Pickett here. Is the full-time starter now after taking over for Mitchell Trubisky last season. I'm very excited for Kenny Pickett. I did a little deep dive into some of his stats, especially down the stretch last year, from week 10 on, which was like kind of when the Steelers season turned around, when TJ Watt came back after the bye week, excluding the two games that he missed, where he played like 4 snaps in the Ravens game and then he missed the Panthers game. So from weeks 10 to 13 and weeks 16 through 18, Kenny Pickett was the number 2 quarterback per PFF throughout that last final stretch of the season that he was playing in. So a lot of optimism from me as far as he goes. I slandered this pick to no end when it was made. Mitchell was in my living room. I nearly had a heart attack. Said some very unkind things. I remember doing the pre-draft, like we did a pre-draft show, me and Kane, just probably like an hour or two before the draft started. I had my Steelers hat on. I'm pretty sure I had this hat on, the Steelers jersey. And I'm like, a new era starts tonight. The Malik Willis era starts in Pittsburgh tonight. You know, it's really exciting because it's the first time we've had a new quarterback in a long time, and I was so hell-bent on Malik Willis. I thought for sure it was going to be Malik Willis. I'm holding on to every trade up. And ultimately, Malik Willis falls all the way down. We get Kenny Pickett. I'm screaming about how we drafted the same age Daniel Jones.
The best part is that you had been live posting every draft pick up until then, and you're like, nope, can't do it. I'm not posting it. And we just check out for the rest of the night.
I probably made something like 100 different like potential scenarios, which is entirely too much for me to be doing considering we have 1,200 followers. But I like pre-made like any scenario. Like I had like for each player, I had like 6 to 7 teams that they could possibly get drafted to. So that way, as soon as they got drafted, I could post it immediately and it was ready to go. Did not make a Kenny Pickett one for the Steelers. I had like all kinds of tackles, corners. I have Malik Willis. I didn't make Desmond Ridder because I didn't even want to see that in my eyes. If you've listened to the Falcons episode, which you absolutely should do, which is a reminder right now because this was one of the things that I wanted to hit in the intro, please go watch every single one of these videos. As a matter of fact, stop here, start at 32, come all the way back to here. I'm sure all of you have that much time. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. I know you can do this in the beginning, the end. I don't really care. But if you watch the Falcons episode, I'm not very high on Desmond Ridder. We have him at 32, so I'm glad we went with Kenny Pickett. What are your thoughts on Pickett just in general? You gotta like jump in at some point to stop me from talking.
I just kind of wanted to let you get that out of your system that you were having the second worst night of your life that I've been able to personally witness next to the Cleveland Browns playoff game. And here you are talking about how he's the second best quarterback for about an 8-week span. I'm going to temper your expectations just a little bit because while he was good over that stretch, how good was the team? They did solid. They did make a comeback, but they still didn't make the playoffs. And the offense still left you wanting more. Granted, that's probably a lot due to Matt Canada. But if you kind of look at his spread of where his passes go, there's still one thing that I kind of want to see from Pickett, And he kind of neglects the middle of the field. And by kind of, I mean lowest of all quarterbacks. And you have a guy like Deontay Johnson. You have a Pat Freiermuth. You have two guys that could legitimately be weapons in the middle of the field. And he's just not quite seeing the field the full way he needs to. Maybe it's just play calling, and who knows? But he's shown a lot more than what I expected year one. I had Sam Howell over him in my rankings. I had Malik Willis over him in my rankings, and so far, he's number one. Granted, very low competition, and that was very much stated the entire draft process last year, but he's been number one to this point, and I think you got the one out of the draft class that could be a solid starter in the NFL. Well, maybe Hal, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I liked Hal too. My rankings were Willis, Pickett, Howell, and then I think I had Corral and then Ritter. Like I was not a fan of Ritter. Every time I saw Steelers Photoshop of Desmond Ritter, I almost threw up in my mouth. But I do think that the middle of the field thing was a play calling thing more than anything, because like outside of those like drags that we would run with Big Ben, we were never targeting the middle of the field with him either. I think that is more of a Matt Canada issue, which we were definitely going to talk about here in a little bit. But I don't think that's a Kenny Pickett thing. I think it is much more of a Matt Canada thing. I will say, though, that like the winning part of it was TJ Watt more than Kenny Pickett, in my opinion. Like, as crazy as it is to say, TJ Watt being back, like, I think we had a 7-3 record with him playing last year, or no, 8-2, sure. 8-2, because we were 7-2 throughout the last 9 when he came back, and then we had the one game at the beginning with Cincinnati where he, forced 2 or 3 turnovers, and we beat what ultimately was one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the NFL. But with Pickett, obviously he doesn't have the rocket arm, he doesn't have lightning speed. I hate to do it, man, but he's just got it factor. He's just got moxie. Like, he's got, like, I hate to do it. Trust me, I hate it. I hate it.
Does he?
I hate it.
Does he?
I hate it.
Or are you just watching Pickensburg on Twitter make video
No, I'm
edits
not
of
watching
him trying
Pickensburg.
to look cool?
No, I'm not watching Pickensburg. But, like, he literally just, like, it just feels like every play, it just feels like he does just enough to get it done. And, like, there's value to that in a way. Like, he does just enough scrambling ability. Like, I wouldn't say he has like that same thing, but like, how there's this like Patrick Mahomes thing where he like runs just faster than whoever's chasing him, no matter who it is. Like, he's got a little bit of that there.
He strikes me as like Walmart brand Joe Burrow, because the hands thing is also an issue between him, and it's not flashy, but like it's steady.
Yeah. And like, I see, so like he gets out some runs a little bit more than Burrow. Like Burrow, and obviously Burrow's better at pretty much everything else.
Burrow pulled it out at the end of the year last time.
Yeah. And then obviously Burrow's better at pretty much everything else. But like, and like, another thing was the hands were never really an issue. Granted, I don't think I think it was kind of rainy in that Saints game. Like the one with all the pigeons in the back, like that was such a weird. But like the hands were never really an issue. Maybe that becomes an issue later down the road, but at least for right now, we're okay as far as that goes. You got any final thoughts on Pickett?
Hopefully he'll develop. Hopefully the offense develops with him, and Canada tries to force the middle of the field more, because it's going to be a little easier to defend this team if they know what's coming every time.
Yeah, and that's. Obviously, like I said, we'll talk about Canada a little bit when we get into the coaching staff. You mentioned pre-show that part of the reason why you had Pickett a little bit lower was because of like what he's going to be able to do because of Canada, like what kind of stuff he's going to be able to run because of Canada. But we'll move on from Kenny Pickett, and we'll move on to the playmakers here, which for a long time I wouldn't say was our best group, but like and this is how it is for most teams because it's the guys that catch the ball, but it was like everybody was excited about this group, and it was young and all that, and like now I'm kind of starting to feel like, all right, now it's like they're not young anymore. Like Najee Harris is going into year 3, which, for a running back, that isn't young anymore. Deontay
Borderline
Johnson,
retirement.
getting up there. Deontay Johnson, I believe, is going into year 6 or 7, something around there, which, really doesn't feel like that. George Pickens going into year 2. You bring in Allen Robinson. That's just going to be kind of a reclamation project. Do you think this is Allen Robinson's last stop if he can't figure it out here in Pittsburgh?
Unless he's like another 4th-string receiver. I don't see him really working out. It's more like you just bring him in. If it works, congrats. If it doesn't, oh well, it was a 7th round pick. Who cares?
Yeah, and like if it wasn't Allen Robinson, like I love
If
Calvin
it
Austin.
wasn't the name,
Yeah. And like if we didn't bring in an Allen Robinson, I know you love him, I love him. It's probably going to be Calvin Austin in this slot or in this spot, and I don't know if I love him starting all the time. Being that small, he's already dealt with an injury in the league. He missed all of last season because of it. And what happens if he goes out again? We're finishing the season like we did last year with Miles Boykin and shit like that I don't know if I can watch again. So I think bringing in Allen Robinson was a nice add because we like moved back like 12 spots in the 7th round, and we're only paying him I think $5 million of his $15 million salary from the Rams. So basically a cost-free addition to get a guy that we've seen at one point in time playing an elite level. And then Pat Freiermuth, who I have said some asinine things about because I love him so much. And I really think he could be like if he was dropped into the Ravens offense and told to do exactly what Mark Andrews does, I don't think you'd see that much difference. I really don't.
Well, Greg Roman's Ravens offense.
Well,
we
yeah,
don't know
like
what it's going to look like with Monken right now. But
the previous iteration of the Ravens offense, I don't think there'd be that much difference. I think he does. The only thing that he doesn't do very well is block, and like that's kind of like I honestly think that's a lot of the reason why we went after Darnell Washington was because he is an extension of the offensive line.
Offensive lineman.
Yeah, and like that's kind of like tight ends aren't being asked to do that as much anymore. Like you look at some of the best guys in the league, Andrews, Kelsey. Hawkinson's okay at blocking, but I mean
Kittle definitely.
I skipped over Kittle. I skipped over Kittle because he's good at it, but
it works like probably the Bills are probably gonna end up doing it with Kincaid, where he's not on the line. He's more like a slot guy. It's just a matter of which system you're willing to run.
Yeah,
as a fly goes right.
I know. I'm sitting there. I was like. But I think he is one of the better tight ends in the NFL. It's just there's a lot of like, I think like everybody.
I think he's top 10 with some aspirations to maybe get into the top 5.
The thing is, I don't.
But he needs a little more development.
The top 5, so Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews, Hawk, and then Pitts.
From the first year,
Waller.
yes. Last year was kind of out the window. Waller's probably like 5'6" range, depending on how you want to argue.
And I feel like there's like a hard line after that,
especially in
down
fantasy
to
and stuff like that.
Freiermuth, Evan Ingram, Njoku, guys like that are just like
maybe Everett.
Well,
Everett in the like 1 in every 10 games he decides to go for 100 yards.
Yeah, but like there's a pretty hard line there, and I think it's going to be tough for Freiermuth to ever break that because. Like I was getting ready to say, like I feel like this whole group is like all on the same kind of talent level. Like there's nobody that sticks out over one guy. It's just gonna be a matter of who's Kenny Pickett's favorite target. Like with Deontay and Pickens, I think obviously they're good at 2 completely different things, but they're probably about the same level of talent at what they do. Najee Harris, you're not feeding him overly aggressively. Same thing with Jalen Warren behind him, and Freiermuth again, like right there. What's your favorite thing about this group of playmakers?
My favorite thing, probably the next slide we're going to get to for Najee Harris, because Najee it's been a little lackluster for a first-round pick. Like, he's been solid, but you can see a lot of second and third rounders do the same thing. And I know you love him, but his explosive run rate hasn't been there. It was better in year 1 than it was this past season. And I know he was injured, but by the time he would have recovered from it, he was doing worse than what he was when he played injured. It was kind of weird for explosive run rate. You look at the percentages, it was not as good. Somehow, or some way, it was not as good when he was healthy as opposed to injured. And I'm just not big on Deontay. Unless they can find a way to get the middle of the field active again, he'll be good again. But last year he had over 140 targets, under 900 receiving yards, and no touchdowns. And he was a guy that you tried to argue for in the top 10 of receivers the year prior.
As far as fantasy goes, Deontay Johnson was right there.
Yes.
It was just a matter of like, what are the odds that a guy gets 140 targets? Like the next closest guy, and I put this in, like I looked it up on, I'm able to use StatMuse, so I looked it up. The next closest guy was 41 targets behind him as far as guys that have had the most targets and never scored a touchdown. Like it was like a bunch of like LaDainian Tomlinson was on there somewhere with like 70 or 80 targets without a receiving touchdowns. It was a bunch of running backs, dude. Like I think it was some. Oh, Torrey Holt. I think Torrey Holt was actually the next closest. I know he's not a running back, but Torrey Holt with the Jags in 09 was like in the top 3 or 5 with like 95 targets or something like that. But it was like 95, 96, 97, all like clumped in there.
A lot of that's like the offense because everything was underwhelming in the red zone for that team.
And he also had like 4 or 5 occurrences that I can think of off the top of my head where he just had like his toe out of like in the back corner of the end zone. Like his toe was just out of bounds and doesn't score a touchdown. Somebody else scores. Is what it is. Kenny Pickett said in an interview the other day, it's luck. Like it's bad luck is kind of all you can really attribute it to.
But under 900 yards is bad luck.
I think the under 900 yards may have been
on 140 targets. You're missing half of the argument.
No, I hear you. It was definitely a down year for Deontay, but like we'd be feeling a lot better about it if he scored 7 touchdowns, like where he's usually at for touchdowns. Shall we talk about NFL Youngboy?
Yeah, we can. I think there's some optimism. I don't think he'll be like a fantasy monster or anything like that, just because he's not a PR machine. Mm-hmm. Granted, that was a lot of Matt Canada, I think. I don't know if it's because he's not as great in the middle of the field on his routes, but when you just ask him to run go routes and corners the entire time, of course he's not going to get targeted that much, and of course he's not going to have huge games. I think he had 5 games where he had 3 or more catches.
Yeah, I think it was
out of 17.
The stat that or not the stat, but like what I grabbed was he had 3 games of 5 or more catches. So like, he's never going to be a guy you feel great about in fantasy, as unfortunate as that is. And like I talked about,
he can be a reliable option when you just
he's a 3
under pressure and need to just hope.
And like
he's a reliable guy in that.
For redraft, these guys, both Deontay and Pickens, are going in like wide receiver 3, early wide receiver 4 range, which is kind of crazy because that's the highest draft. Like those are your 2 top receivers for this team, and it kind of to me seems like nobody knows which one it's going to be, so they're just going to stay away from both. Which is worse. Our main league is obviously switching to Dynasty this year, so it's a little bit different. Like there's a world in which Matt Canada's gone next year, and I have George Pickens, and I'm doing backflips. But for right now, I'm not really touching any of these guys. Really, I'd take a flyer on Pat Freiermuth. I think maybe you can get some post hype on Najee, but don't draft him as your 1. For God's sakes, please don't draft him as your 1.
Unless you're doing 0 running back. That's the only time.
And even if you're doing 0 running back and you take Najee Harris, you're not doing 0 running back anymore because you're taking it too early.
Unless he fell a ton.
Yeah,
you're in the league
that's what I'm excited for in our league. Is I feel like everybody hates Najee so much and thinks he's so shit that I'm going to get him in like the 9th round in a dynasty league. That's my hope anyway. Just being a little optimistic.
I don't hate him that much.
Oh, come on.
I'll be that clear up front. I'd take him before the 9th round. Maybe even the 7th.
But real quick, we'll touch on Calvin Austin. Was what a 4-3, like low 4 threes, something like that.
I think it was 4-3-1, something like
that. Is 5'9". I think he's going to play a fun little role here in Pittsburgh. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm excited to see what Matt Canada draws up for him and how he gets him involved because obviously
wide receiver reverses are going to go crazy.
They're going to go nuts. But obviously he's not among this top 3, so he's going to be getting some, he's going to be getting his snaps pretty sparingly, but I think he can make the most of them. We talked about his speed. He was like a 99th percentile athlete outside of height and weight. So he'll be fun to watch for. And then Jalen Warren, we're going way more in depth on this group than I have with any other team, and I'm sorry if you're not a Steelers fan and you haven't gotten this great analysis quite yet. But Jalen Warren, I hated him because he was taking away from Najee's touches, and I just love Najee to death. But like towards the end of the year, I was like, okay, this guy's pretty good. Like it's kind of hard for me to hate him because he is good. So, and he was undrafted. So
I've seen a lot of hype from big fantasy guys saying keep him as a handcuff because he could end up altering stuff from Najee, keep him fresh.
And I'll tell you this, if something happens with Najee, there's not a guy that's gotten consistent snaps last year outside of those 2. It's like Anthony McFarland's still here. I don't even think Benny Snell's here anymore. So, like, if Jalen Warren were to take over as number 1 because Najee gets hurt, Jalen Warren is a It's July, so I don't want to say anything too crazy. But dude, he's an RB1 on a week-to-week basis, in my opinion. I think especially because he can get the receiving work. He's quick out of the backfield. He'll get you those explosive runs that Najee unfortunately cannot. But it'll be fun to watch. We're 20 minutes in and we've done 3 slides. All right, moving on to the offensive line. This was the first round. This is where our first round pick was used on Broderick Jones, the tackle from Georgia. They also invested in free agency in Isaac Sayamalu. Got James Daniels here from last offseason, and Chuck Okorafor, who they extended last offseason, and Mason Cole, who they signed last offseason. So what's your favorite part about this group? Notice how I'm always starting with favorite and not like something you want to talk about. Optimism only.
And you can actually kick it to me for offensive line analysis. I've liked what you guys have done in free agency over the past few years, getting Sayamalu and Jaden Daniels. It was definitely needed. Them along with Mason Cole in the middle, they should be able to do some up the middle, inside runs with Najee. You have a big running back like Najee. You can finally take care of that now that you're pretty stacked on the interior. Well, stacked is a loose word because they're all stacked, above average.
Stacked is good.
Stacked is not a good word for it, but they're more competent than they were before. You're not yelling at everybody on the offensive line now. But I do kind of worry about the tackles because we mentioned a little bit before. Okorafor, he's not going to be horrible. He's going to be there on the offensive line, probably just below average in terms of tackle rankings of what you'd want. I know he graded around 60 last year on PFF. So he's better than a guy that would be coming off the bench or the streets to play, but you're not expecting elite level play. And then I think Broderick Jones, he's only got 1 year left tackle because he had to fill in for Sawyer after he graduated and went to the NFL. And he was solid at Georgia. I just think it might take a few years for his pass blocking to really develop. He's a good run blocker. He'll be able to do stuff to his side running, but pass blocking is going to be a little rough. And if you're expecting big things from Kenny Pickett, you might end up seeing a little more of the quick game if you don't want him on an island by himself at left tackle against some of the best edge rushers in the league.
Yeah, and obviously he's got a Myles Garrett, a Trey Hendrickson within this division. Baltimore is always going to be able to create pressure.
And a Kyle Van Noy now, too.
And a Kyle Van Noy as well, obviously a monster. How are we going to adjust the Ravens' rankings now that they've added Melvin Gordon and Kyle Van Noy? Do they move up, 6, 7 spots in overall ranking for you?
Playmakers are now 32nd with Melvin Gordon.
Okay. Forgot about that. I'm going to keep treating this like a storytelling time. For draft night with Broderick Jones, I was honestly surprised. I was, so obviously the 3 tackles, if you want to call Skoronski a tackle, Paris Jones, Skoronski, and then Darnell Wright comes off the board. I really didn't want Darnell Wright, so I was glad that he went before us. And then we were sitting there at 17. I saw Christian Gonzalez. I thought we were jumping up for Christian Gonzalez. I thought we were maybe even jumping up for Joey Porter, who we'll talk about in a minute because he's on our team. And we jumped the Jets, which I think was genius. Thank God Bill Belichick is the most petty person on the planet because he just let us jump them for nothing. And we were able to get a guy who hopefully could be our franchise tackle. Was very good at Georgia the past few, or at least last year, right? Because Sawyer was a rookie last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he also played some snaps at right tackle the year before.
I think it was the right
sparring, yeah,
for the first championship.
Yeah. So he's much more of a pass protector than a run blocker, which as a guy who is a much more developmental type tackle, I like that a lot more. Because when you have a guy who's a developmental piece, but he's good at run blocking, you get what we got from Trevor Penning last year, where he's cool. He's probably going to be a better run blocker than Broderick Jones would be a pass protector. But then he's so bad in pass protection that it's going to kill your passing game, and obviously that's what's the most valuable in the league now. And Broderick Jones is an athletic freak, and if he's already got a little bit of a refined pass protecting game, I think that's very good. He, like I said, an athletic freak, can figure out the run blocking stuff. That's not something that I'm overly worried about. I think he can develop that a lot easier than his pass protection ability. I also think Isaac Sayamalu, I put it in a breakout candidate, not because I think he's going to improve so much when he gets to Pittsburgh. I just think people are going to notice him more. He was on that stacked Eagles offensive line where it's Jason Kelsey, yeah, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, they're all talking about those guys. This guy graded in I think he was in he was 6th or something. He was in the high 70s. And Like, hell, I barely even, like, I was like, did he start for them last? Like, I had no idea. I couldn't remember. Like, I knew he was on the roster, but, like, they drafted Landon Dickerson the year before. They had Cam Jurgens in there. So it was like that interior, the guard spots were a little messy. So, like, it's great. I'm glad we have him now. And I really think that with him and James Daniels, I think that's one of the best pairs of guards in the NFL, especially as far as, even just underrated guards go. Like, those two guys were sneaky good signings by us, I believe. So very excited for this offensive line that has been a problem spot for us for so long. And hopefully, with Khan coming in here and we're really investing back in the trenches again, can be fixed over time. So moving on to the front seven, which is the biggest strength of this team, ranking at 4th, which is our highest front seven to this point, and I believe tied with the Falcons for the highest group of players. Because I was about to say other than coaching, which we also have at 4th with Mike Tomlin, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Damn it, I'll cut that out. I'm sorry, guys.
It'll stay.
It'll stay. It obviously starts with this pair of edge guys, TJ Watt, who the last time we saw play a fully healthy season, won Defensive Player of the Year, tied the sack record. Should have broke it because he sacked Tyler Huntley. I was there. I saw it. It happened. And if fucking Michael Strahan falling on top of Brett Favre counts, that should count. He has the record. He should have the record. Anyway, we also extended Alex Highsmith the other day. He gets a 4-year, $68 million deal. I think that's good value for a guy who, for a lot of teams, I feel like would be a one for probably at least a third, if not a half of the league.
I didn't realize how many sacks he had last year until the notification.
He was leading the league in sacks for the first 8 games of the year, and that was without TJ Watt on the other side. He's got Malik Reed on the other side of him. Alex Highsmith was probably getting doubled for a good portion of that, and he was leading the league in sacks, so was a guy that I wasn't a huge fan of when we drafted him. I didn't really get it. Like, I was like, can we please just bring back Bud Dupree? Why do we have to do this again? Like, you're only going to get lucky so many times with these edge rushers. Clearly not. We're just going to keep turning them out. And like I said, would be the best edge for probably a third of the league. We have him here next to one of the 4 or 5 best guys in the NFL. Then on the interior, we still have Cam Hayward, who's still playing in a borderline elite level. I can't imagine how much longer that's going to go on. We maybe have 1 to 2 years left of that. One of the biggest things from last offseason was we were under the impression okay, well, we're going to have TJ, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, and we would also have Stephon Tuitt coming back, who was probably was a Pro Bowl player at multiple points in his career, or maybe just 1 point, but was a very good player. Pulled the rug out from under us. We didn't have Stephon Tuitt. We were able to get Ogunjobi here, which I think is a really sneaky. Dude, I love Ogunjobi.
Of the AFC North at this point.
Yes, dude.
Been everywhere but Baltimore.
And I guarantee you, just like I thought about Melvin, I guarantee you Ogunjobi spends at least some time in Baltimore in his career.
I mean, they have to do it.
They love doing that little shit where it's just like, this guy was above average at one point in time, and now he's not. Let's go get him. We also
he's got to complete the AFC North cycle.
Yeah, you have to.
Every team.
When he almost had Chicago, but then he fake retired to get out of the contract, and then we ended up picking him up here in Pittsburgh, and we even extended him. So good for us. Our second round pick, Keanu Benton, or one of our second round picks, coming from Wisconsin. A lot of people's pro comp for him, obviously not on a talent level, but on a play style level, was Cam Hayward. So good job, Pittsburgh. This linebacker duo, though, could be a problem. I think might be the biggest. I mean, obviously they don't have their own separate slide. I do think that this might be the single biggest problem position. It's been a problem position ever since Ryan Shazier was brutally murdered in Cincinnati. And then we drafted Devin Bush, and he brutally murdered us.
Gave Miles Jack a dance.
There was a point in time where I was like, dude, Devin Bush is going to be the next best linebacker in the NFL. I think it was that Chargers game it was 2019. He played really well. I think he had a pick 6 in that game. But that rookie year, dude, he was flying all over the field. He was awesome.
Now he's slow.
Then he wasn't awesome. Well, he tore his Achilles or his ACL or something, so that might attribute to it partially. But now he's in Seattle. And we just we did the Miles Jack thing. We gave him a chance. That didn't work out. He graded it a 30 last year, which was certainly something.
Impressive.
Yeah. To even be that low it's pretty impressive. So we overhauled this linebacker room. We bring in Cole Holcomb from Washington, then also Elandon Roberts from Miami. He also spent some time in New England in his career as well. He's actually been in the league for like 7 years. I didn't realize how old he was.
Yeah, I didn't hear until I was listening to it. No, I looked at it a few hours ago.
Thank you. But this is probably the biggest problem spot on this team, this linebacker pair. But what do you have as far as this front seven goes?
I really like everything you guys have at edge. You have a four-headed monster in T.J. Watt, Highsmith, Nick Herbig, who his brother Nate is on the offensive line as a backup.
I think he might end up playing some off-ball as well. I've heard like some training camp rumblings about that.
Well, he's going to have to. See that duo? He's going to have to. And then Marcus Golden as well. Mm-hmm. You guys will have a very healthy rotation coming in off the edge, so you don't have to worry about if one guy goes down. You guys will be fine. Linebacker's obviously an issue. I mean, Elandon Roberts, if you ask him to drop in coverage, he's going to suck. He's a down the pipe, run right at you type of guy, and you're praying Holcomb can work out there. And then on the front line, obviously Cam Hayward, I don't have to say much about him. He's top 5 in the league still at his age for the position. I like the pick of Keanu Benton. He's going to be solid right off the bat. He's not flashy by any means, but he gets the job done at all occasions. And then nice little pickup for the Chargers you guys got. Right behind him on the depth chart is Braden Fehoko. Great in the middle. He's not going to do anything in pass rush. He's going to be an early down guy, help you stop the run, because he is a monster of a human being, and he's great at run defense. Not much else.
Yeah, very smart of Omar Khan and company to go pick up a guy from the vaunted Chargers run defense.
It wasn't on the interior. It was all zone runs.
Oh, yeah, bad.
We were historically bad on zone runs, and we were in the middle of the pack on interior runs.
We were historically bad on zone runs.
It's like the special teams thing all over again in 2010.
Yeah. Benton, I'm kind of excited for Benton. He's not going to bring a whole lot as far as run defense goes. I think he's going to be much more of a pass rusher, kind of like a Cam Hayward was. If he can put on some weight like Cam Hayward did when he came into the league, maybe he helps us a little bit more as far as run defense goes. But this is the 4th ranked group for a reason. There's a lot of talent riddled throughout this group, even more than I thought at points in time last year. Like, I was like, man, this is, especially when TJ Watt went down, like, it was just like, man, does TJ really carry this group this hard? But
I will say they'd be a lot higher in my personal rankings if it wasn't for the linebacker, though. That's the
yeah, like if
I probably would have had them probably around 1 or 2 if it wasn't for them.
If we had the pass, so let's say last year didn't happen and it was Devin Bush and Miles Jack here, would it still be 4? Or would the name value of because Cole Holcomb and Elandon Roberts among like normal NFL people have 0.
They're probably better.
Yeah, but nobody knows who they are. Like Devin Bush was a 1st round pick, Miles Jack was a 2nd round pick, and was a Pro Bowler for Jacksonville. Like among normal NFL people, they're like, oh yeah, those 2 guys are better. But I think there's a real world in which we upgraded at linebacker this year. Like there is a chance where that happens.
I think you did too, honestly, because like you said, Miles Jack was freaking horrible. Bush has never materialized, but it still would have probably kept him in around the same range, even with name value. I mean, Miles Jack was never the same player after that AFC Championship appearance. I don't know what happened after that.
Now, what if we had Fred Warner and Roquan Smith?
You'd be 0 because you wouldn't deserve to be at 1. You'd be better than that.
Okay, I'll talk to Omar about potentially adding at least one of those 2 guys. All right.
Spend a lot of linebacker. That's where to do it.
Oh, yeah, that's how you build a team nowadays. All right, moving on to the secondary. This is another group that made some big additions this offseason. We got Joey Porter Jr., which, like I said earlier, I thought that when we traded up to jump the Jets, not specifically because we were jumping the Jets, but because Joey Porter maybe was falling a little bit. Mitchell, are you all right over there?
Cracking my back.
Okay. Just making sure. So we're able to get Joey Porter. I'm like on the edge of my seat throughout all of those last picks. There were a couple teams that needed corner towards the bottom of the draft. The Saints come to mind. The Chiefs come to mind that could have taken a corner. They obviously don't, and we get Joey Porter at the top of that second round. Was a first-round player for me, was a first-round player for a lot of people, was, I think he was the corners were kind of in tiers. I had Devon Witherspoon in a tier by himself, and then Christian Gonzalez in a tier by himself. Some people had them too in the top tier, and then it was Joey Porter and Deonte Banks in a tier below those two guys, and then after that, we're getting into the rest of the corners. But for a lot of people, he was either top 3 or top 4 corner. Getting him in the second round, I think, is great for us. He is built perfectly for this scheme. If you haven't heard by now, his dad played for the Steelers. His dad's name, also Joey Porter, for those that didn't know and haven't heard that by now. And
like the cornerback.
Yeah,
That's what they'll be saying one day, right?
Yeah.
Just like the quarterback.
When we draft Joey Porter the third. And, long arms, press man fit, like he is your optimal Steelers corner. And that was, I know a lot of people were mocking him to Pittsburgh because his dad played here and he grew up in Pittsburgh and he went to Penn State. But more so than that, if his name was Levi Wallace, I literally, okay.
You pick someone actually.
If his name was Levi Peterson, he would be a perfect fit for the Steelers. And just like, as a play style fit, long arms, press. Shut up. Levi Wallace, here's a fun fact for all of you Steelers haters. Levi Wallace, number 1 in PFF grade on defending go routes last year. Number 1. 96.8. So don't run a go route.
Over the other routes.
Don't run a go route on Levi Wallace, or you will have a mistake on your hands, bucko. Patrick Peterson gets brought in here. That was like our older veteran signing of the year. That we hope works out. He actually played pretty well for Minnesota after it felt like for a little bit that his career was kind of ending. Kind of gets a little bit of revitalization last year in Minnesota. It comes over here to Pittsburgh. I think it's great for, not only just having a good player, but also the mentorship of being able to mentor a guy like Joey Porter and a guy like Corey Trice, who, let me tell you, is going to be a problem for the NFL. Guys, 6'3", 223. Runs a fourth. I think he ran a 4.4 something.
I guess he had injury concerns.
He did. So
I didn't ever hear it.
He was a second or third round player for a lot of the media, a lot of teams. I don't think I ever mocked him in as high as the second, but he was definitely a day 2 player by a lot of accounts. Falls all the way to the 7th round. I'm like sitting there staring. I'm like, how the hell is Corey Trice still available? And Omar Khan does his thing and goes and gets him in the 7th round. And supposedly he's been tearing it up in camp, which is something I'm very excited about. We could have a pair of young, good corners on our hands here. It's just a matter of, is his knee a ticking time bomb, which was one of the things that I heard said about him, which is a little scary. But it's a 7th round pick. Like, if he never plays a snap for the Steelers, okay, I'd be a little upset because I'm getting a little attached to him. But it's not like a big lost cause like... Oh God, what was his name? I feel like it was Cody Sensabaugh. We picked him in the 2nd round, 7 years ago now.
Time on the Jags too, didn't he?
Is it a different Sensabaugh? Anyway, we picked a 2nd round. We picked a guy in the 2nd round. He never played a snap for us. So, that is the thing that why I'm like cautiously optimistic about this cornerback group, because we drafted Artie Burns in the 1st round. We drafted whoever this guy is that I can't think of his name in the 2nd round. We haven't been able to fix the corner problem here. We brought in Joe Hayden, who, I could very well see Patrick Peterson being like what Joe Hayden was for us. We're bringing Patrick Peterson over a little bit later, but like, could he be a Joe Hayden level player for us for at least a year or two? I think that's very possible. And Joe Hayden was our CB1 for a very long time at like 30 years old. So worse things have happened. And you got to remember also, we're going to run this press man bump and run scheme. Helps a lot to have TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith up there. These guys aren't going to have to cover for overly long. They're not going to be following their guys for 4, 5, 6 seconds. It's just going to be kind of jam them, end the rep early, like I said about Corey Trice, and let those pass rushers eat, because that's ultimately what they're going to do. But, real quick, we also have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who I still think is the second best safety in the league behind yours truly, Derwin James. But
the player.
I think he's firmly number 2 now. I think he really made that apparent last year. He played like the best safety in the NFL last year. I still think Derwin's a little bit better. DeMonte Kazee and Keanu Neal, the package deal, have to play together at all times, are also here. I was really worried about I was really worried about what we're going to do about the second safety spot. That's why I really wanted Brian Branch, but I'm pretty cool with our draft that got an A+ by most people, including myself. So I've talked for like 8 minutes in a row. What do you have to say about the secondary?
I will just say, of the Blitz Pod members, I just had to double check before I said this, but I was the highest on the secondary group. I actually really like this group. I think Patrick Peterson still has a little bit enough to give you guys a good run on defense, try to carry the offense up for the woes that we'll get to on the next slide. But I think it's a really solid group, and they brought in a guy who will be a great mentor to both Trice, potentially, and JPJ. So hopefully they can learn from him, learn how to be a good press corner, and bring a different element to this defense they've been missing for what seems like my entire life almost. Like watching you guys, it's always been underwhelming at corner at best. And then because obviously if Minkah and Derwin aren't your top 3 of safeties, then you're not ranking it right. You're looking at something completely out of the scope of everybody else's eyes, apparently.
When you say, like, when we're talking about the secondary and like I think about how bad it's been in the past, I like get like Nam flashbacks of like the CBS intro screen of Artie Burns, Mike Mitchell, Sean Davis, throughout like those teams where we had, and this is my opinion, and I've talked about this a little, not on the pod, but like, you know, with my friends and stuff, that Big Ben, Le'Veon, and AB was the best quarterback, running back, wide receiver trio that we've ever seen in the NFL. We had that, and we were running out Sean Davis, Mike Mitchell, Artie Burns in our secondary on a week-to-week basis. And I just like...
Well, that's why they were putting up stats they had, because they were constantly on offense.
And they had to. But like, it's just like, oh my God, dude, that was so bad. And it really, like, to be quite frank with you, other than Minkah, it hasn't improved. Like, our corners have not been that bad, but
there's optimism now, though.
In, like, the Steelers' best corner in the last 20 years is, like, Ike Taylor. Well, I like Ike Taylor. But like
Ryan Clark,
he was safety, yeah, and then obviously Troy was also a safety. So like
safety's been your strong spot.
Safety has been a strong spot. Corner, and I guess you start reaching back to Mel Blount, then and Rod Woods. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. I'm showing my age a little bit.
We'll cut that one off.
Yeah, no.
But there's optimism to be had with this second.
Certainly, it's great.
At that.
Moving on to the coaching, which we do have 4th because of that guy on the graphic that I could not find a picture of him looking the other way. So for those that can't do a little inferring, that says defensive coordinator, because I know he's got a little bit of black sleeve going there. You can't really figure it out. I might have to put it in the Instagram comments as well that does in fact say defensive coordinator. But that guy right there, who I think has, really since he's taken over in Pittsburgh, has been one of the best coaches in the NFL, is the primary reason why they're 4th. As I was really writing this down, because we did say, like, it's heavily weighted towards head coach, but coordinators matter. I think we'd probably have them maybe 5th or 6th, just because of the ISIS impersonator that we have at offensive coordinator.
I don't think I accounted for the offensive coordinator enough in my rankings personally.
I think I had us at like 5. I think I probably had us at like 4th or 5th. But as we go through this, and
we both had them at 5.
Yeah, as we dive through and we dive in and go through these rankings, and pay a little bit more attention to the teams, it becomes like there are certain things that I'd want to swing one way or the other. Tomlin, his resume speaks for himself. He hasn't had a losing season. The line, which we'll talk about in a minute, set at 8.5. It's a trap. Go over.
They're gonna win exactly 8-8, one tie.
I'm well aware we've done that, by the way. In the first 17 game season, we went 8-1. He will not do it. He will not allow it. But I'm gonna just keep saying that he's a great coach. We'll move on to Matt Canada.
The real talking point.
Listen, there is a serious value to continuity. And I think that now more than ever, where, I think this is more of a talking point for the NBA, but also in the NFL as well, where if within 2 years or 3 years, depending on what kind of situation that coach is being hired into, if he hasn't shown either improvement or a continuation of results, he's fired. Almost without fail. And not here, because the Steelers, like, same way with, like, the Spurs and the Warriors and, teams like that, value.
Cowboys.
Yeah. The Packers, which, again, that's a flaw of theirs. We talked about it a little bit in the Packers episode. Owner. Yeah. By default, they have to practice continuity. But continuity matters. But when there's a guy that needs to be let go, you got to learn when to let him go. And I think maybe that's a little bit of Tomlin's ego there, because he was, Canada's guy. For whatever reason, the Steelers have this weird connection to Maryland, which makes my life like a little weird, because, my favorite team and the college that I'm going to have like this weird connection, even though they're in completely different states. And I think that's part of why we got Canada. And I think Tomlin doesn't want to admit that he was wrong about Canada. Like, we kept Keith Butler for longer than we should have as well. And I think that if we don't see improvement with Canada this year, I think he's probably out. My problem was the main reason why they said that they were going to keep Canada around was for continuity reasons, obviously, and to not ding the development of Kenny Pickett, for lack of a better word. Just trying to keep him with the same playbook and stuff like that. But the problem is, when it's a bad playbook and it's bad plays and it's making him look worse than he is, that also hurts his development. And then when, like, if we have one rookie year of him changing playbooks, that's fine. Like, we could, I mean, it'd be a little bit of a learning curve, but at least we'd be like, all right, for the rest of his rookie contract, he's probably going to have the same play caller. And he's probably going to be looking at the same playbook. Now, we got 2 years in, and even by the time his rookie contract ends, half of his NFL life would have been spent with this shitter. And that hurts development more, in my opinion. So, if you've got anything to say about this coaching staff, please do before I hurt myself.
I don't know why you guys didn't just pull the plug on it and move on. I personally witnessed a complete change in play callers with Justin Herbert, and he got better in year 2. It's not a complete detriment to completely switch over an offense. It might even bring more to their attention than they knew before. Because if you just stick with a horrible coordinator the entire time, they're not going to develop, and they're going to look like shit the entire time. There's no sense in keeping continuity if the continuity is just a clogged toilet the entire time. I mean, we've been hinting at it this entire time, that how bad of a play caller is. We talked about George Pickens not getting enough. I don't know if it was Pickett or Canada's play calling, probably more so Canada than Pickett, but maybe a little Pickett on, like, nothing in the middle of the field. I swear, every time I turned on one of your guys' games early in the season when it was still Trubisky, there was some stupid wide receiver reverse or fake wide receiver reverse going on. He was going deep into his bag. Them and the Raiders, just for some reason, were in love with wide receiver reverse or fake wide receiver reverse, and it just did not work for anybody. I don't know why they keep trying this. It was just so painful with both quarterbacks to watch him try to call an offense and completely tank the team when the defense was playing their hearts out.
Yeah, it is. You're going to make me cry here in a minute, but that was the same problem that we had when Big Ben was here, and I understand why we did it with Big Ben was because Big Ben was old. Big Ben didn't have the arm that he used to, so we kind of had to create plays that way. We did it a lot with Chase Claypool. We don't really do it as much with Pickens as we did with Claypool, but Claypool's probably a better athlete in my opinion, at least as far as size, speed,
can't catch
shit
high.
like that goes. Hey, man, stop it. And we ran that a lot, like especially like inside the 5 or inside the 10. We ran a lot of jet sweeps to be inside the 5-yard line. We went this way a lot when we're supposed to be going this way. Like when we're, 15 steps away from scoring points, and we're just like, all right, well, we're just going to run out of bounds. That was one thing, and I did want to mention this with the playmakers. One reason why I think that we don't target Deontay Johnson in the middle of the field is because he does this dumb shit where he'll be like, oh, but I could get a little bit more. Oh, and then he'll just do that over and over again until he runs out of bounds. Like that's like one of the most frustrating things is like Deontay Johnson always tries to bust it outside so that way he can make the big play. I've never in my life seen Deontay Johnson run open down the sideline because he never is actually able to do that. Run forward.
He's all lateral quickness, nothing vertical.
And that's his best attribute is his like shiftiness, and that's why he's such a great separator. But Jesus Christ, man, like the amount of times that he did that and would either run out of bounds or fumble or anything other than goodness.
For how high you were on this playmakers group, you're sounding awfully negative, and it seemed to be candidate first, and now it's turning into event set.
Terrell Austin is the defensive coordinator here. Moving on to the schedule. This is the 25th ranked strength of schedule. We are lucky enough to get both the AFC South and the NFC North, which the AFC South probably the worst division in the AFC. NFC North probably the second worst division in the NFC outside of the NFC South. But we do have to play the Bengals, Ravens, and Browns twice a year, which is probably like the only thing that's keeping this from being the worst strength of schedule because, you know, those teams... Two of them made the playoffs. One of them was right there with us on the outside looking in. And that team is going to get a potential franchise quarterback back this year as well. The over-under is set at 8.5 wins. And I'm telling you, Vegas knows what they're doing here with this line. I wonder how many of the bets are on the over just off the fact that it's like, it's a winning. All he has to do, if they get the winning season, they're over this line. And... looking down the schedule, I don't think it's crazy. I think we split with every one of our division opponents. That's just kind of how it is in the AFC North. We like every year, no matter how good we are, no matter how bad we are, we split. I think Cincinnati swept us 2 years ago. But other than that, I mean, we swept Baltimore like 2 or 3 years in a row. But I do think, you know, I think obviously we all think that the Bengals, Ravens, and Browns are higher than the Steelers, at least in our rankings, but I do think we split with them. And then outside of that, you're looking at wait, do we play the it
looks like the NFC West,
I was about to say,
which is like a solid 2-2 record because you get 2 freebies and then 2 ridiculously hard ones.
I'm an idiot. I looked at the Packers and I was like, yep, that's the NFC North.
Like,
there's one NFC North team on there.
Well, you played the Packers once, so
yeah, something. Yep. We play a team in the NFC North. I honestly, would I say that I like that even better? Honestly, I think I do because you get the Cardinals and the Rams.
I don't know because I feel like the Niners is like a guaranteed loss. Sorry,
it's not. You know why? We beat the Bengals in week 1 last year. We beat the Bills in week 1 the year before that. And I'm pretty sure we beat
Burrow with post-appendicitis, who had no training camp and just rolled up like a week before to play.
What about the Bills the year before that?
Yeah, that one was rough.
We're really good in week 1.
2 years ago.
We're really good. I think and we're at home. I really think that's going to be a close game. Also, this is like the first time we've played at home in week 1 in like 9 years.
I don't know. I still feel like
I'm taking the Steelers on the spread.
2 freebie
I'm going to be honest.
On the spread, let me run through. I'll try to read through. I think you guys are going to lose to the Niners. I think you guys will split with the Browns. I'll give you guys the benefit of the doubt and say you split within the division. So we're at 4 there. You'll beat the Raiders. So 2-4. Beat the Texans. 3-4. Beat the Rams. Okay. 4-4. Jags. That one could be a coin toss. We'll see which version of Trevor Lawrence we're seeing at that point.
Yeah.
Titans. They might be a little more frisky than what we've given them.
That'll be a closer line than I think a lot of people think.
It's 2 hard-nosed teams against each other. That's the hardest part of it. Packers. If Jordan Love's either going to be amazing or horrible. So
I honestly think that game comes down to whoever's playing better between Kenny Pickett and Jordan Love at that point in the season.
Probably. Whoever's got the hot hand. Then the one that's not divisional next is the Cardinals dub. Pats. Coaching versus coaching there. We'll see how good they're doing.
That's the same thing. I think it's Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett matchup in my mind.
Colts. You guys should be able to handle that one. We'll see if AR is looking at that point. And then the Seahawks is the last.
I think we lose Seattle. I think we lose Seattle on the road. I don't like the fact that we finished the season with Bengals, Seahawks, and Ravens. 2 of those on the road.
That's rough. That might be the nail in the coffin.
Is what it is. But if we're sitting at 8-8 heading into Week 17 in Baltimore, Tomlin ain't gonna let it happen. I'm telling you.
I don't think
I'm such a fucking fanboy. I hate it. Whoever's still listening, I'm so sorry.
So the first year he doesn't go above 500. How far does he tank in the rankings? Because there's been a lot of around 5 seasons and he's been coasting off of.
Well, and that's the thing. And we're sitting at. I'm fully content with this going over an hour.
Touches.
I'm totally like I knew that this was going to happen, and we're getting to better teams now. So I think these episodes are going to start getting a little bit longer. Whether that's good or bad, we'll find out.
A lot of analysis to do
with the view time, but I am a little tired with hearing like whenever we're sitting at like whatever record we're at, and Tomlin's like, "Oh, we got 3 playoff wins in however many years." Like, you know how many teams have more playoff wins than that? All the teams that have just like your top 6 quarterbacks. Like that's really it. Like unless you have one of those guys, which we probably stopped having. 6-7 years ago, something like that. And all the years that we had Big Ben at his peak, we had like some of the worst defenses in the NFL, or at least when we had the offense at its peak, we had some of the worst defense in the NFL. And the years that we had good defenses and good Big Ben, we won a Super Bowl. We went to a Super Bowl. We went to an AFC Championship game. Like, I mean, I don't know what else you could ask. And the winning seasons, like, there are 0 teams in the NFL that have not had a losing season in the last 16 years. So,
well, I mean, if it wasn't for Cam Newton having to start for the Pats,
yeah,
we would be having a much different conversation.
Well, and they had Tom Brady, so fuck them. And also, it's not to start his career. And just forgot my point. Fuck. I was coming in with a heavy hitter too.
I mean, Tomlin walked into a Super Bowl caliber team almost. They were not far removed from when Cowher was still in there and running the team.
I mean, it was a lot of the same. Like, the offensive line had gotten worse, so the fact that we won that Super Bowl was kind of a blessing. But, like, just how many... We are so lucky as Steelers fans to have Tomlin, and, you know, we've got them at 4th, even with the handicap that is Matt Canada. How many guys are we going to... We're going to fire Mike Tomlin. There are teams that will fire... If we fired Mike Tomlin in Week 11, there would be teams that would immediately fire their coach so they could get in with Mike Tomlin, like, as fast as they can. There, and then what do we do? Where are we going to go get Bill Belichick? Are we going to go get Andy Reid? Are we going to go get Kyle? Like, is that the plan if we fire Mike Tomlin? What are we going to do?
You get the next offensive guru for Kenny Pickett.
No, we promote Matt Canada. That's what we're going to do. Oh my God.
The Cons seem to love him, so it worked out.
Oh, okay. So over under 8.5, and then we'll get moving to the rankings, and we'll get out of here.
I'm gonna go. I think this is the year.
Coward. No.
8 wins. 8-8-1.
Censored. Censor this.
8-8-1 is still under. So.
Fine.
I'm hedging.
As long as Tomlin doesn't get a streak.
They can still get the 500.
It's fine. All right. Wrapping up here with the rankings. So we have the offense ranked at 18th. We have the defense ranked at 7th. These formulas are getting a lot more complicated as we go because you see 18 on offense, 7 on defense, 4th in coaching. Somehow we're 17th. I just work here.
I will warn you that the Giants just signed James Robinson, so we might have to do some adjusting to rankings after this episode.
I'm glad we kept the Steelers here then. So right now, the championship window, I have it as closed because I don't think this is a championship team this year. No, not in the AFC. Okay, if we were dropped in the NFC, do you think the championship window is open?
You'd win the NFC South. And then maybe a playoff game, and then I don't think you compete with the top 3. You'd need
Cowboys,
some
right?
luck.
Okay. I was like, well, and we're going to talk about the Cowboys whenever we're going to talk about the Cowboys whenever it's their turn to be talked about.
In whatever amount of rankings away that is.
However long away that is from now. So I do have it as 1 to 2 years away. I think if Kenny Pickett plays like he did in those last half of the season for even 75% of next year, we're talking about him as a top half, maybe top 12 quarterback in the NFL, like right in that Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins. I'd even throw in like Tua in that tier, right in there with those guys. This defense should still be intact unless Cam Hayward makes a big drop off or we have a humongous injury that like leaks into next year. And even the playmakers should still be intact as well. I think Deontay Johnson would still be under contract for that next year. And I think we're right in it. Even if Kenny Pickett doesn't make that big step, I think we fire Matt Canada, get a new offensive coordinator, and then Kenny Pickett makes the step. And that's when the championship window opens. And even, you know what, even if Kenny Pickett makes that step, I still think there's a world in which we fire Matt Canada, because it's just like, okay, this wasn't a top 5 offense. You're goodbye. Get out.
I think what you guys would have to do is, I think it's fair. I think what you would have to do is make the hard choice of moving on from Deontay and finding a star receiver, because he's not a star, and Pickens is pretty much a niche guy right now.
That's
he is jump balls, and that's about it.
Well, and that's the thing was, like, I had Pickens as my wide receiver 2 in that class. I was like over the moon when we drafted him I was at work. I couldn't get over myself. I was so happy because he had an X receiver skill set. I don't think he becomes an X receiver in the NFL. Now that I've seen him in the NFL, he would really need to come a long way as far as separating goes. But I would love to see us go do that. I think with Omar Khan, I think that the odds of us doing that are a little bit higher. Now, obviously, for us to do that, it would need to be that season that we're talking about with Kenny Pickett, where we look at him and go, okay, this is one of the 12 best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's just missing
that one thing.
And he needs a guy. Like, he needs a guy. And even if, our contract situation is good enough, even with the guys that we're paying on defense, and
Trubisky
still being
was
able
only
to pay
2 years, right? So you're done with him after this year?
Yeah, and I think there were thoughts of us cutting him or trading him or whatever, but, we're paying Kenny Pickett $3 million a year for the next 3, or, for the rest of his rookie contract. We could, hypothetically, just move Deontay into the slot and go get a guy. Just add on to that. Maybe we draft a wide receiver. Again, I mean, we're a wide receiver factory. We can just pick a guy in the second round and get a superstar that way. That's a lot easier than trading.
Or wait for a guy with character concerns later on, and you'll manage to keep it in-house.
Oh, yeah. Or draft a guy who's really good, and then he develops character concerns for whatever godforsaken reason. But, okay, so are we in step here with the championship window with the offense-defense rankings?
Yeah, I think we're in step. I think the only thing holding you guys back from being further up is just another season of seeing Pickett prove it. Okay.
All right. I like to hear that. This is making me feel good. I'm ready to run through a wall. All right. God, I'm so excited for football season. So this officially concludes the first bottom half of the rankings. We've only got the top half left to go.
We're now moving into the top half.
Yeah, we're now moving into the top half. I might put up some snazzy stuff on the Instagram. I might not. I might play the show for a little bit. So it's kind of like do I want to post it or not? Some little snazzy graphics about some stuff about this stuff. Whew, we got to end this episode. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for bearing with me. If you're a Steelers fan, I'm sure you're right there with me. If you're not, you probably stopped watching roughly 45 minutes ago. So if you're still here, please do the like thing, do the comment thing, subscribe, tell your friends to like, tell your friends to comment, tell your friends to subscribe, because we need it,
Spotify,
brother. I'm telling you. On Spotify, leave a good review. Do whatever the equivalent of that is on Apple Podcasts. I don't know if it's like a heart or whatever it is. Do that there. Go check us out on Instagram at BlitzPod. We got 16 more teams to go. The teams are only going to be getting better. The analysis is only going to be getting better.
Podcast members remaining.
Yeah. So,
and
shut up.
By the way, expect longer podcasts on those.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The same thing that, it's going to be different when Mitchell comes up for the Chargers, whenever that is, because we don't know when that is. It's going to be a little bit different because I'll just tell him to shut the hell up at a certain point. Whereas, since I'm the host today, I could just go on for hours and hours, as I have done. But I can stop Mitchell. So for the 4 Chargers fans out there, oh yeah, bullshit. For our 4 Chargers fans out there on planet Earth, be on the lookout for that. I can't tell you what team we have coming up next because that would ruin the surprise. So,
but there was an argument about it.
Shut up! Shut up! All right, if you made it to the end of this video, congratulations. You may or may not know what we're talking about. And thank you again. Do all that stuff that I said, but we are out of here. Should I do the cane thing? Should I do it? The little.
All right.
Well, no, not that.
We are moving on to the next one in the rankings. See you guys next week.